Lighter note, we can begin with the editorial cartoon, right? I know many of you want to be a political as far as affairs of the cities are concerned, because most of you are business people, right? But of course, if you don't have a conducive environment for your business, then it means also everything will actually be going topsy-turvy, as we can see with the Nairobi County's ship. Swim or sink? Let's begin with Dr. J. McPhee. What do you think about the affairs of Nairobi County?
Well, in some ways, I'm quite impressed with what is happening in some of the areas of Nairobi, because we have new roads coming in. We have the upgrading of certain roads. I was on an upgraded road the other day. I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is that Nairobi is an incredibly large place now.
Yes.
And it's becoming more and more difficult to manage such a big place.
Yes.
But, you know, I think at the end of the day, what we really have to do is to ask ourselves, you know, very often I was talking to a group of accountants a couple of weeks ago, and they said, look, you know, I was talking about sustainability reporting, and they were saying, look, you know, you're talking to the wrong audience here. You need to go and talk to the government. Mm-hmm. But, you know, you have to keep in mind that it is individuals at the end of the day who, in fact, either do their work or don't do their work. And, you know, one of the things that we have to realize is that there are many people employed by Nairobi County. Mm-hmm. Are all of those people doing their work as they should be?
Yes.
Because if they did, we would change around Nairobi County. Mm-hmm. The point is that all the time we're looking for some easy money from some Tom, Dick or a Wino. Yes. And we're not in fact going to get that easy money. You know? We've got to realize Kenya works if I make it work.
Yes.
I have to have personal responsibility for Kenya. Mm-hmm. And we've got to have this from the top to the bottom in Kenya. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what will make everything work in Kenya.
Yes.
You know, we have Mumia Sugar Company didn't produce 1 grain of sugar between the 1st of January this year and the 30th of June. Not 1 grain. And it used to be the largest producer of sugar in the country. We spent 23 billion shillings last year importing sugar. Now, some of it would be, you know, we have this highly industrialized sugar, which we have to import anyway. But the point is, we're importing something that we can produce in Kenya because of individuals. Mm-hmm. And we could name those individuals. I think everyone knows who I'm talking about, you know. Mm-hmm. But we have to change. We've got to change. We have to think about the future of Kenya. Mm-hmm. Kenya will work if I make it work.
Kenya will work if I make it work.
And Nairobi County will work if each person who's meant to make Nairobi County work, works.
Mm-hmm. Right, thank you, thank you. Let's hear from Geoffrey Odundo.
I think just building on what McPhee said.
Why are you being sorry for Geoffrey?
Well, I think what James has said is pretty much in line with what my views are on Nairobi. I think it's a very important city. Looking at it from the financial perspective, I think Nairobi is actually considered a hub, sort of a financial hub for financial services. We have a number of investment banks here, a number of very well-established banks.
Yes.
Insurance companies. So if you look at the African continent, Nairobi is sitting quite well. Looking at the connectivity of Nairobi to Africa,
yes,
and also to Europe, we are very well positioned as a nation. And even just generally the living conditions, the environment, mm-hmm, and the atmosphere, Nairobi has a very good potential of being a very attractive city in Africa. I've traveled the whole of Africa, and I can tell you, if you look at facilities we have and the infrastructure we have,
yes,
you'd be very impressed. I did a trip to Rwanda, and I thought we need to clean Nairobi better. Did another trip to Lagos, and I thought we're okay. So with due respect to my good friends from there, I think we really have to take Nairobi seriously. Mm-hmm. If we're going to continue to compete effectively with regions, especially a country like Rwanda, we should be very conscious about what Rwanda is doing to really reposition itself as a hub for Africa. Mm-hmm. I was listening to Marco Joseph yesterday, and they're saying about the way the Rwandese are upgrading their airports. They've got their sights on making Kigali a sort of a connectivity hub. We really have to think very, very deeply about Nairobi. Clean it up. I think Nairobi needs to be cleaned. We've got good infrastructure that we have set up in place. We need to really, really ensure the infrastructure, the environment is pretty well cleaned. I mean, looking at the companies looking at setting up regional African headquarters here, the numbers are increasing. But if we don't give them the services, then ideally we will really lose out to our competitors. So I want to agree that Nairobi really needs to, a true repositioning, a true regeneration of the city is actually something we should be looking at.
So as it is, the current state of play, are we losing the grip of, us being the hub of East Africa, the go-to place when it comes to investment, when it comes also to, tourism conferences as well? Because given the latest report also from Ernst & Young about the foreign direct investment, it seems Ethiopia is taking, taking a whole chunk of, FDI as it is right now, and we're sleeping day by day. So we have reports were coming from, World Bank about, the ease of doing business, but how does that really translate? Because when you look at the FDI, ease of doing business, people are still complaining about, the cost of labor, the cost of manufacturing here in the country is way up. I don't know. Let's hear from Stanley Mandugu.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. I think it is very correct to assert that we've got all the advantages for the development actually of Nairobi to be actually a gem in this region and even the African continent.
Yes.
But I think one of the challenges that we are having is the political scene, the political side of Nairobi. And I think that is one of the issues that we really need to do. We need to fix our politics. When you look at the county assembly, the frequent fracas that we normally have, the way the people were supposed to actually be guiding policy and making bylaws or laws on how the business we're talking about are supposed to be concerned, behaving as the way they are doing, really something for someone to be concerned about. We also have a look at the frequent dismissals and sackings of the county executive committees. Those are technically the ministers that are supposed to be heading technical divisions. You really see that we really need to fix that part of Nairobi, that aspect of Nairobi.
Yes.
And that one actually is one of the contributors of creating an enabling environment to attract foreign direct investment and other investors to start up and even to improve whatever is already, the businesses that are there. So I think we need to have a discussion about fixing the political aspect of the Nairobi county government. Yep.
Thank you. Phyllis Wakia, good morning, good to see you.
Good to see you, Debal.
It's been a long while since you deserted us here. Yeah?
I'm back. Good to see you, thank you. My views are, when I look at the constitution and the functions of the county government, they are serious functions. And such serious functions can only be undertaken where there is predictability and stability, even within the county government. So if you look at what has been happening, that predictability and stability has been lacking to ensure that the performance of the services and the functions of the county government are carried out effectively. And the link between that and business and competitiveness is very direct, because businesses are operating in the county.
Yes.
Some of the services that are required out of the county government will affect the competitiveness of business.
Yes.
So if you're going to attract investors into the country, it's important for them to see that there's policy stability, to see that the county government is functioning, that there's good infrastructure, whether it's a road infrastructure, sewage infrastructure, the water services is running, the licensing and everything else. So the signal that is sent then when it appears that the main or the biggest county in the country in terms of financial and investment is having this unpredictable environment is not a positive message. I still believe Nairobi is an attractive investment destination. A lot of investors are still looking at investing in Kenya, and we are still seeing that. But the cost of doing business is increasingly a concern, and something that the already existing investors are facing. So it's something that even for someone coming into the country, they'll always look at the bigger environment, both the ease of doing business, the cost of doing business. They'll look at the road infrastructure, they'll look at your competitiveness in other areas and how services are provided within the county. So I think it's important that we give this predictability through the county government in Nairobi, and use devolution for what it was, to deliver services to the people, to ensure that we are running a better country, and just ensuring that we are competitive as a nation. So that's what I think about.
So we should not be actually happy-go-lucky when we have the ease of doing business report that we've scaled up, but the cost of doing business is just something else, is a different kettle of fish altogether.
We should have
that
a
is what
broader
really
focus,
matters.
yeah, both on the ease, the cost of doing business, the competitiveness issues, the issues of whether the economic growth is trickling down to the Mwananchi, the issues of the corruption index. So I think it's a broad approach to ensuring that we are an attractive investment destination, but also that we are improving the lives of our citizens.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, let's hear from Kiprono Kitoni. That particular editorial cartoon, are you happy with it? Nairobi County going down. Of course, there has been also a whole debate of whether we should have Nairobi as a county, because this is the capital city. Should we be having Nairobi as, County 47 as it is, or it should be just a standalone as a capital? There are debates about it, I don't know, being a metropolis. So there's a raft of issues that are really coming into play as far as this capital city is concerned. Should it be a county? Or maybe we can begin from that particular sink, or that particular ship that is sinking. Swim or sink?
Yeah, thanks, Debal. First of all, I think a lot has been said by my colleagues, and I won't belabor the point much more. I agree with most of the sentiments that have been expressed so far. Again, I would also shy away from a blanket indictment of Nairobi. I think Nairobi is one of the greatest, most fantastic cities in the continent of Africa. Like Jeff, I've had the privilege of traveling to many cities across the world and across Africa. And Nairobi has a serious value proposition. I mean, if you look at the social infrastructure, if you look at the improvements in security, I think behind the veneer of all the negative news we get from the county assembly every week, really there's a lot of stuff that's going on. I mean, like where I come from, there's a sewer system being installed. Nairobi is far safer today than it was 10 or 20 years ago. Roads are being improved in many parts of the city. And I give credit to Governor Sonko also for just avoiding being at the forefront of that negative politics that's coming out of their county assembly. So I would not condemn Nairobi wholesale. I think going forward, I mean, we have about 2 years plus between now and the next election. If I was in charge of Nairobi, I would focus on just a few things. I mean, for example, the garbage collection situation. I'd look at the solid waste management. It's very unfortunate that 55 years after independence, we haven't yet sorted out Dandora. And Dandora is a huge potential energy source for this country. I mean, there isn't a waste-to-energy solution that we have deployed in Dandora. I would look at the transport infrastructure, how to pool transport more effectively to get people to work, to avoid the huge traffic jams that we are facing on a daily basis. But I would say, by and large, Nairobi is a serious place to be. There are a few things that need to be done, and we need, as the private sector, to support the county government of Nairobi to deliver on their promise. All right,
so on the debate on the metropolis, or just remaining as a capital city?
I would support Nairobi continuing to be a county.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Gituro Wainaina, I don't know, you as also the former DG of Vision 2030, what plans do you have for Nairobi?
What plans would I have? We have. Not me, really. I think it's very interesting. I have a very team which is looking at the glass half full. And it's very interesting that the opposite, being optimistic about Nairobi. And I think that's cool. But I think we need to take some caution that, yes, Nairobi is better than most African cities, but I think that's not our benchmark. We should go beyond that. Each one of you knows somebody always kept telling us, we are better than Somali. That's not a competition at all. And I think it's important. Nairobi is interesting. I was listening yesterday to a young fella talking to BBC on technology. He said, we are tech city. And he took 3 things. We have the youth. He said, secondly, we have a good internet connectivity. And thirdly, perhaps it's better than anybody in the world, our transactions are digital. And that will move us. You go to Mama Boga, you pay her by digital. I say it will never work for any country if you don't go that. And those are things we want to leverage when you look at Nairobi. I think Nairobi more should be seen as a hub for tech than perhaps all these other things. But I think it's also important in my view here. And let me share something here which you find about Nairobi. Tuesday I had a team from Australia. And by 5 they were at the national park. I said, God, 10 minutes. So this guy has never come to Africa. And Kenya was the first place. It was very clear Kenya is very different from Africa. And he says, this is amazing. I'm signing something at the university, but this morning the lion was in my background. And it's something we have not utilized well.
Yeah.
If I have 6 months layover at the airport, I can use 3 hours to go to the national park. So that's the area about Nairobi. For its governance, I think it's time, when you talk about 40%, or 40% of the GDP be generated in Nairobi, I think surely we should not have it as a county. It's a very interesting country. It's the only country we don't have a deputy. In my view, they should actually be under the national government because of its position. I think in terms of, we must take responsibility, people of Nairobi, because we choose the leadership. It's our responsibility, and I agree with McPhee completely that we have to move it in a different way. And I think the governance of Nairobi County is important. For the cartoon, I'm happy it's not everything Nairobi is sinking, it's only just the city hall. So maybe the others we are up, but the city hall is one going down.
No one going down.
Absolutely. And I think we need to see it in a way perhaps we can get at the national level because of its importance in the GDP.
All right. Well, I'm not here really to discuss also personalities, but I found it interesting because we were having a conversation yesterday with a professor, and they were really astounded at how also the politics of Nairobi really plays out. That we have in Nairobi almost like, let's say, almost 90% of residents of Nairobi are literate, and a county like West Pokot, to compare, has maybe also the least people who are literate as well. But when it comes to election, they elected a professor of mathematics to actually lead that particular county. And here it was the reverse, as so to speak, as well. So they were wondering, and he was saying, I actually voted for this particular governor, but also I'm really displeased by the outcome of all how the county is being run. I don't know. I don't want to actually subject you into politics as well, but as we're winding up on it, do you think Nairobi should be a metropolis? Because there was that debate as well. Or maybe
I think from my side it's very clear, isn't it?
From my side it's very clear.
It's very clear. It should not be having it. I think to me it should not be a county.
It should not be a county.
Yeah.
Dr. McPhee?
I would agree entirely with that. But again, I respect Mr. Kithonyi's view, okay, that it should be a county. But, if you take Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. is not a state. If you live in Washington, you've got special status. It is the capital of the U.S., all right? And I feel that we should do something similar for Nairobi, simply because it is so important for the economy of Kenya as a whole.
Absolutely.
And, Jeffrey was talking about us being a financial hub, and this is what we want to be. And what I feel is, that if we're under the national government,
yes,
problems, let's face it, things are being developed in Kenya. We've got a new road coming from Upper Hill down to Mbagathi Way. It's going to be in use, I think, fairly soon. I was talking to someone yesterday from Uganda, and he was saying, well, this bypass that goes from Entebbe to Kampala is not yet open. We have opened the southern bypass. We've got the northern bypass. We've got the eastern bypass. All of these things are actually in place. Their developments, as you were saying, they have actually occurred. So we can be proud of that. Now you can go from Wainaina Way across to Village Market very, very easily on that new road which has been developed there. So, and we are taking seriously the whole thing of getting through Nairobi, because you've got to remember that all the exports from Uganda, from Rwanda, from South Sudan that go to Mombasa, they come through Nairobi.
Yes.
So Nairobi is incredibly important from many, many different points of view. But I think that, to have the, as it were, financial muscle,
yes,
to look after the capital, it should be something which is looked after by the national government. But again, that's my view, and I respect the view of yourself. Okay, it's not as if I'm saying.
All right. Okay, maybe I need to take a straw poll of yes and no's.
Just very, very quickly.
Yes.
Just a very quick intervention. I think, to me, we are about to receive the BBI report.
Yes.
And perhaps we need to look at the governance of the country from the context of what the BBI will be proposing to us. That's a very important conversation. I mean, how many counties that we have in this country? Is the overhead sustainable? Is the governance structure that was proposed in the 2012 constitution working for us? I think those are all conversations that are going to happen. And
you seem to have led the BBI.
I haven't. For me, my message.
It's just anticipating what am I saying.
No, my message to the political class is: can we, for heaven's sake, see that BBI report? Let's start the conversation now.
We start the conversation there. So it's taking, they're really biding their time with it, right?
Well, I remember actually when we were talking about the new constitution, one thing is that, the president at the time, was running around the country saying we're going to have even more than 47 counties. But I remember I was in a conference with Kwame Owino
Yes.
from the Institute of Economic Affairs, and he asked this member of the committee of experts, he
Yes.
said, look, how are we going to pay for this? And his simple reply was the counties will generate their own economic resources. But you see, in some way, that has led to terrible problems. For example, the governor of one of the counties has slapped a bill on Magadi Soda of 18 billion shillings. Now, does this man, if you have got to pay 18 billion shillings as a business, just take the business and we go home.
Absolutely.
Now, you see, so we have people in the counties. I was in Mauritius earlier this year. There was a conference of 90 people. The people there were all MCAs. Tuna nyonya matunda ya uhuru tu. So, the point here is that people get into these high places and, all the time, travel, there's no limit on it. So I agree with you fully, but let's hope that the BBI has the teeth
Yes.
to actually change things, because we've got too many MPs, to my mind. Sorry, you MPs, because, I was just wondering whether I'll be run out of Kenya after, I was born in Kenya, so I hope I'm not run out of Kenya. But, we have to have fewer
But I think
MPs.
McPhee is as good as that BBI report. It will be important if he can implement.
Absolutely.
Because that's our biggest weakness in this country.
Yeah.
And he asked me, I was in charge of the Vision 20, and I appreciate giving that responsibility. And we sat down with a company, and we thought we need a right commuter rail for Nairobi. And we wanted to strive from Othero up to the airport.
Correct.
No right compensation, you use the middle of Uhuru Highway.
Correct.
No? Because your mass transit, you need to transport like 300 people. I can tell you, one of the senior person in the office of Kenya then, it's people cannot pay. And that's not the point. You can even have differentiated costs. McPhee can pay 10 shillings. Somebody from Kibera might pay 1 shilling.
No.
I
Me
was
1
like,
shilling, but who you? Give me a moja.
That's and I couldn't understand it, because if you look at most countries with the population we are talking about, we are now headed 5 million. The only way to decongest is right commuter lane.
Correct.
And those plans are there. But when you come to implementation, Githai was there as a minister for Nairobi, whatever. But I think a BBI will be great, but let's implement the commission.
Right.
And also about BBI, I hope the report is not just fully political.
Yeah.
Because around this table, we've mentioned things that touch on business.
Correct.
The issue of service delivery, the cost burden of a lot of leadership or representation at every level to the mwananchi. And what that does is that it affects the competitiveness of business. So I hope the report will also be looking at the impact county governments have had in either facilitating or not facilitating business. Because from the example he's given and the numerous ones we've given, in terms of doing business across counties, the failure to recognize even permits issued by other counties,
Yes.
where in the national government regime that didn't exist. So I hope there are going to be proposals also on how we streamline and ensure that inter-county trade is not affected, that people are able to do business freely around the country, and that we address those issues. Relooking at the constitution is not a bad thing.
Yes.
In South Africa, when they had their new constitution, they actually had a provisional constitution for 10 years. And what they did is that they used that 10-year period like a learning curve, where when issues would arise on different things, they would go to the Constitutional Court, and a certificate or a ruling would be made on that issue. And eventually, after 10 years, they then put all these things together and came up now with the final constitution that they implement. So it's time that we reflect, but I hope that at the end of the day, it is not just political, but also the economic impact of the implementation of the constitution is taken
Thank
into
you. Let's hear from
consideration.
Stanley Manduko.
Yeah, as for me, I have a different view. First of all, I do agree that the cost of running the bloated government and the county governments is quite exorbitant.
Yes, yes.
That's something that we mean to look at. But when you're looking at Nairobi, whether it should still continue being a county or a part of the national government, I think really the problem is not as to whether it should be a county or not, because there are various advantages that have arisen by virtue of it being a county. The only thing that I have to say is that maybe what we should look at is the redistribution of roles of the national government in respect to Nairobi. For instance, like the issue of mass transportation.
Yes.
It should not just be left to be the function of the county government. Or if it has to be there, then resource the county government. The problem we are having is that we have also been reading about it. You realize that you find that even the national government owes a lot of money to the county government.
Yes.
This money is not being paid. Yet we expect the county government with this cash-strapped resource to do so much. We expect a lot because, first of all, the population is high. It is the capital city. Standards are supposed to be much better than what is happening elsewhere. But I think you also look at it at the backdrop of resourcing. Now, when you look at what are the advantages that the counties have brought, first of all, you look at the political, the aspect of representation. It is there. It is a gain in that respect. When you look at the social bit, there is a gain in that respect. And then the economic bit, that's what we are saying, that more need to be done. Now you asked a question, why is it that when you look at the political class or the governors that have been chosen have a very divergent background? But you realize that, one, the people who actually do the voting is not us who are seated here, or the middle class.
Yes.
The people who do the voting are the people on the ground. And one of the biggest challenges that we are having is that we are having such a very big disconnect between the so-called haves and the so-called have-nots, if I may use those particular aspects. But when it comes to making political decisions, the people actually who are doing it are down there. So, and you've realized that they have got their own reasons as to why they are voting whoever they want to vote.
Yes, yes.
So that is something that we need to look at, and then we say, now, what can we do so that whoever who is being voted is able to deliver?
Right. But I want to rope in, or you wanted to say something
Do
before?
you want to go?
Yes, I wanted to actually ask you, first of all, in terms of the counties being cash-strapped, because I know now they've mooted an idea that they need maybe to seek external borrowing to and project the funds, project funds as well, from maybe, I think they're seeking to get from the World Bank the modalities to do that. Then they should be having the municipal bonds at the Nairobi Security Exchange. In light of what we are having currently as far as that is concerned, do you think this is just worsening the situation as it is right now? And do you think this is a wise move from the counties in terms of now them seeking funds and then having municipal bonds at the Nairobi Security Exchange?
Yes, I think...
You've heard about that particular idea?
Yes, I do. We are really behind it. I think just to comment two things about Nairobi as I close your
Sure.
I think the indicators of an urbanizing city and a modernizing city are very clear in Nairobi. I think we could be hitting ourselves too hard sometimes, but I think it's not just a case of leadership, but it's also a case of, or even the academic intellect of the leader, but really the pragmatism. And I think I want to just agree with Kitoni about the current governor, who is able to, things are working in a way. If you look at the malls that are coming up, look at the roads, look at the connectivities, things are sort of moving forward. I was just being told yesterday there's the number of hotels coming up, including a new one, and a Hyatt being set up here, and I was like, things are really interesting. So we probably need to sort of dissect what's the issues.
Do we have the space?
I think someone is looking for a deputy.
So it's a very interesting phenomenon. We need to dissect it because somehow things are moving forward. Now back to your question about financing. So we think that there is a case for counties to explore alternative financing, other outside the normal financing they get from the national government. And why? Because there are ways that you can securitize certain assets, especially infrastructure assets, of counties, and be able to have those cash flows support an investment. Let me take, for example, the water companies. So the water companies are running pretty well. They've got very strong cash flows. They are looking for funding to improve the quality of water provisions, explore more potential, etc. But those cash flows can then be ring-fenced and be issued and really be used to create a bond of some sort that can actually be
Yes.
help the expansion of that. And that way you then sort of reduce the high dependency on national government for funding. So we think there's a good case, and county by county, every county has specialized infrastructure that can actually be used for that. So I think we should not just focus on an overall debt issue, but let's look at the specific counties and the specific issues they have that we can address. Because over-reliance on one source then becomes a risk, because now you give pressure on government to look for funding. Yet, for instance, we have alternative funding in the investment sector. The pension fund and
And
insurance
you're right,
companies
Odudo,
are
I
sitting
won't
on
worry
1.5 billion.
because the market will determine.
Yes, it will be
And
market
the people
determined.
make, okay, this is a good bond, I'll go for it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let people go and say, well, demand and supply.
absolutely,
Yeah, I would take it.
absolutely.
Right. Dr. Mafi, you think from your own assessment the municipal bonds is the way to go as an alternative?
You know, number one, it is allowed in the Constitution. But, you know, I tend to feel, you see, what is our, you know, one of our problems, okay? One of our problems, I think, is that money that goes into government is then used by individuals wrongly. And if we're going to float a bond, are we going to be sure that that money will be as managed as well as, let's say, a company would manage it? Because the company, at the end of the day, has got to repay that bond. And, you know, we have to keep in mind what is the concern that I think many Kenyans have about that. You're talking about that $58.1 billion this morning, just this morning. That's 5,810 billion shillings. So, you know, what is our concern? Our concern is that when it comes to repay that, who's going to do the repaying? It's our children or our grandchildren. And I think we've got to understand that if the money is used well, fantastic.
Correct. Absolutely.
Absolutely
It's
fantastic.
the utilization
But
than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so that's my worry is that. And you know, this is where we go back to what I said right at the beginning. You know, it is individuals. You know, when I speak to the Institute of Certified Public Accountants and they say, look, you've got to speak to government. No, it is individuals in government who are giving the government a bad name. And our only problem is that those individuals, which one of them, you go to Rwanda, you have people, you have generals, army generals in jail, you have permanent secretaries in jail, you have ministers in jail. Go to Kamiti here. It's the one inch Watukufu.
It's pretty sore here. That's nice.
So, you know, we have to, the judicial process has got to take place. You know, we can't be lax on people. I was talking to a managing director yesterday. Now, this is a man who's turned around a company. You know, his product is now rated #1 in Kenya. And, you know, he had to sack a whole lot of middle managers because they're all stealing. But, you know, he rolled up his sleeves. He didn't just sit in a chair, okay, and do his work. He was even down on the field. And this man, I tell you, he's a genius. He's a Kenyan. He's not expatriate. He's a Kenyan. But if that man, for example, had been in charge of Mumias would still be earning billions of shillings every year. So it depends on us, you and me, and us here individually. And we got to get this idea across to every single Kenyan. Why? I was talking to a friend of mine who lectures at the University of Nairobi. He's in the electrical engineering department.
Yes.
He has 88 students in his class, develop software to solve this particular problem. He then used software to diagnose the amount of copying that occurred. Out of the 88 students, 6 were originals. The 82 others were all copies of those 6. Now this is happening in the top university in Kenya, in electrical engineering, where you have to be the top people in the country. If you want to do electrical engineering, you've got to be one of the top people in the country. And his comment to me, he's a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, not an expatriate, a Kenyan. And he said, Jim, do you understand why buildings are falling down in Kenya today? Because corruption is down, as someone at the Institute of Directors said the other day. A lady said, look, corruption is down at the primary school level. And I can give you examples of that as well. So, you know, the diaspora keep Kenya afloat. Our foreign direct FDI in 2018 was $1.6 billion. The money that we got from that diaspora is 50% more than that. It's $2.4 billion. So, you know, our diaspora are there because they are incredibly well qualified people.
Yes.
Okay? I have a past student who's the chief financial officer of a company in Silicon Valley. Okay? Now those people are remitting their funds. 40% of our remittances come from the US. Okay? Now they're keeping Kenya afloat. But now if we're destroying our education system, even with corruption, we've got to understand. Some parents come to me and say, look, talk to my boy, you know, he's not doing what he should be doing at school. My talking to that boy is useless. Why? Because he does what his father does.
Correct.
Example
Correct.
is what we've got to
Correct.
give. And it's got to come right at the top. Right at the top. We've got to see what people do. Singapore was, in fact, you know, number 4 in foreign direct investment last year. The US was number 1 at $252 billion. Singapore was number 4, a city. Higher than any country in Europe, $78 billion. And they used to be behind us. But they implemented our 5-year development plan and we said, Taskambili, tafadhali, tutongea